Okay, I can confirm that we are now live streaming on YouTube.
Right, my clock says 6:30.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Graham.
So do you want to make your announcement about the chat function?
I think I've said everything that I need to say, Councillor Graham, in terms of the points of order, raising the points of order. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Melton Borough Council. Everybody is welcome, and hopefully the public are watching. And I'd like to invite the Reverend Kevin Ashby to offer prayers, and I'm very grateful that he should do so. Kevin, can I hand over to you?
Thank you very much, and it is good to see you all, if only virtually. So let us pray. So this evening we pray for our borough councillors, in particular for this assembled borough council this evening. We ask you would graciously grant all councillors wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of the people in Melton Borough, a commitment to social justice and rightness, confidence in what is honourable and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony, even where there's honest disagreement, and joy in their civic duties. So thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honour of bearing appropriate responsibilities. These things we pray for your name's sake. Amen.
Amen. Kevin, thank you very much for doing that. I'm now going to have to read the following clarification on protocol for remote meetings. The meeting is to be run as a remote conference on Zoom. Any member participating by a remote link who declares an interest in any item of business in terms which requires them to leave a room must ensure that they cannot be seen or heard during the agenda item. This shall be confirmed by Democratic Services. This member of staff will thereafter confirm to the remote member when they may rejoin the meeting. Should any aspect of the conference link fail during this meeting, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the link can quickly be re-established. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of link failure for individual members, a remote member or members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the item, providing the meeting remains quorate. Should the meeting no longer be quorate, the meeting shall be adjourned and any remaining items of business will be deferred. If the individual member's link is successfully re-established, then the remote member will be deemed to have returned at the point of re-establishment. I would ask members to indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand using the raise hand function on Zoom. With the support of Democratic Services, I will then invite each member in turn to make their contribution to the debate. All microphones will remain on mute at all times except mine and those of relevant officers. Individual microphones will be unmuted when the member is invited to speak, and all microphones will be unmuted before proceeding to a vote. Before proceeding to the vote, I will ensure that all members and officers have no further comments by confirming with Democratic Services that no hands are raised. To help with the efficient running of the meeting, there will be different ways of voting dependent on the report to be considered. I will advise members upon the introduction of each report how the vote shall be taken. If any member wishes to raise a point of order during an item, they should use the chat function to bring the matter to the attention of the technical host, who will advise the mayor accordingly. Any member who has been absent from a debate on a particular item due to connection failure must abstain from a vote on that item. Please turn your mobile phones to silent and note that the meeting will be recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Have we any apologies for absence? We've got Councillor Hewson, Councillor Fisher, and
we're aware that Councillor Child will
will be arriving late. That's it. Thank you. To confirm the minutes of a meeting held on the 26th. For this item, I'll seek a mover and a seconder. Due to the nature of this item, I'll be seeking the consent of a meeting rather than take a roll call of all members. It will therefore be assumed that those members that were not at the meeting will be noted as abstentions. A positive vote will be assumed from all other members unless any member raises an objection using a raise hand tool. Where an objection is received, a full roll call vote will be undertaken. Councillor Orson, could you move the minutes of the 26th of February? Councillor Orson?
I'm unmuted now. Yeah, very happy to move the minutes at 2122.
Thank you. And Councillor Higgins, could you second? Councillor Higgins around.
Second that, thank you.
Thank you. The mayor can have no members or officers. No one's requesting to speak or has an objection. I'm asking the officers.
No, I can confirm nobody
No.
else has raised their hand.
So I will confirm that was carried. Thank you very much. To confirm the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 14th of May 2020, for this item, I will seek a mover and seconder as per the minutes just considered. I will again assume consent from the meeting unless a member raises an objection. Where an objection is received, a full roll call vote will be undertaken. Councillor Orson, will you move?
Yeah, to confirm the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 14th of May 2020.
Councillor Higgins, will you second? A thumb up, I imagine, is the same thing. Anybody wants to speak?
No, there are no members indicating their
I'll
wish to.
take those. That is carried. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Any member who wish to do so, make a declaration of interest in respect to the items on the agenda for this meeting.
We have
Use the
Councillor,
raise hand function.
Mr Mayor, we have Councillor Orson, Councillor Posnett and Councillor Pearson with their hands raised.
Thank you. Could you take them in turn?
Councillor Orson, first of all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two declarations of interest tonight. One is the normal one, which is an important one. Now, I am a member of Leicestershire County Council, so I declare a personal interest in any matter that may pop up in their name. The other one is I declare a personal interest in the motion 13.2, release of sky lanterns and balloons. I am a member of the National Farmers Union.
Thank you very much. Councillor Posnett, was it next?
That's right, yes.
Councillor Posnett?
I'd just like to declare I would just like to declare a personal interest as a member of Leicestershire County Council. Thank
very
you.
much. And Councillor Pearson? Councillor Pearson?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, a personal interest as a Leicestershire County Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Um,
Any others?
yes, we've got Councillor Holmes and Councillor Chandler. So we'll go to Councillor Holmes if that's okay first.
Yes, it's just that as a member of the National Farmers Union. So
Thank you. And Councillor Chandler?
I too am a member of the National Farmers Union and wish it to be recorded. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor's announcements is the briefest part of the meeting. The mayor has been remarkably relaxed since the annual general meeting. I will try. We're waiting to find out, maybe Pam knows more than I do about VJ Day, but they are trying to get a remote service. And if that does take place, I will represent the borough at the remote service for VJ Day. But otherwise, I've done nothing really, and I have nothing in my diary. So hopefully I'll be able to hand over to Councillor Faulkner at the meeting in September, but we'll see how things go. Leader, you've got the announcements.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marlies. May I start off, by the way, congratulating you on raising the flag on Armed Forces Day. I thought you did an outstanding job, and you really did well and did Melton Borough Council proud. So thank you for that. But on the leaders' notifications, tonight we do have some important business on our agenda relating to finance, the establishment of a constitutional review group and reviewing the annual report from our scrutiny committee. We also have 3 important motions that I look forward to discussing with all members later. But first of all, I would like just to raise the crisis that's impacting on agriculture throughout the whole of Melton Borough now. Agriculture is still one of the largest employers, and certainly the ripple effect from each farm is probably in multiples of 10 at least. It's a massive industry, very valuable to Melton Mowbray. A whole series of, it's the perfect storm that's really happened. As we know, we had dreadful weather. I said in a group meeting, it clearly started on September the 29th. It was just a biblical rain that day. And we will all remember that throughout the whole of October, November, December, January, and into February, it was on our news most week that areas were flooded. This area does seem to have been impacted more by rain than some other areas. And if I often drive to Kings Lynn, and the crops in between here and Kings Lynn, I could genuinely say I've never seen anything quite so bad in my life. But on top of that, also, we've obviously had the impact of COVID on farming, which has hit the hospitality industry, which in turn has had a great impact, particularly on the dairy industry. I do applaud the government for giving financial aid to the dairy farmers. Some didn't qualify, but most did, as I understand it. And so that is well done. Now, what I would like to announce is that I will be instructing officers tomorrow morning to get in touch with the local NFU chairman and the local NFU secretary to invite them in to have a talk to see how Melton Borough Council can help the farmers through this dreadful crisis that they're going through. Farmers do tend to work on their own. I've been there myself for years and years and years. You are in isolation. And when you're on your own, you're working all day and they work hard. My son at the moment is working 16 hours a day. And you come back and you're on your own and you look at your bank balance and it's shrinking and it's no fault of your own. Mental health issues do occur. And obviously there's great concerns about the farming community on that. So, like I say, I will be briefing officers tomorrow to get in touch with the local NFU chairman and secretary to invite them in for a meeting and a briefing on how we can help as a borough council. We are now in our 4th month responding to the coronavirus outbreak. And I want to once again reiterate my sincere thanks and gratitude for the way this council has responded. Working with our community and voluntary partners, our community hub has now delivered over 2,200 food parcels and over 200 prescriptions. Through the government business grants, we have paid out nearly £11 million to over 950 businesses, as well as providing guidance and support. Throughout this entire time, I am proud that we can say we have been here for Melton, and we will continue to be so now and in the future. The pandemic has clearly had a significant impact, both in terms of public health and the economy. And we are now refocusing on recovery and how we support our communities and businesses to rebuild. It is not going to be easy, and that is why we are calling upon government to do more to support us financially as we lead the local response. At a time when the demand for our services and need for our support have never been greater, we are finding ourselves under significant financial pressure. Yes, the government has supported local councils, We are concerned they have not taken account of our individual circumstances, and we may still be left with a sizable gap. We are still working through the details of the third round of funding, but please be assured that if funding remains insufficient, I will be writing directly to the Secretary of State to make our case for additional help. At this point, I have to also register my thanks to Alicia Kearns, our MP. She has really worked tirelessly on our behalf, and I know very well she has lobbied the Secretary of State already with our case. And so she has turned out to be the most incredible MP. And so thank you, Alicia, for all the help you have given us. As lockdown has started to ease, we have worked closely with local partners to ensure a successful retail and then more recently hospitality sector reopening. It has been pleasing to see that the measures introduced have allowed these businesses to reopen safely, and the people of Melton have responded very positively. We have also been working hard to enable local businesses to recover as quickly as possible. As well as the grant schemes mentioned earlier, we facilitated a business webinar a few weeks ago and relaxed regulations so those providing hospitality can maximise outdoor space. We have also facilitated the start of a new cafe culture, which we hope will start to develop further and help the reinvigoration of our town. Alongside the response and recovery, other areas of business continue, Mr. Mayor. The recent meeting of the Housing Improvement Board continues to show that we are making positive progress in this important area of business. As we have got to grips with our long-standing housing challenge, health and safety has been of paramount importance the whole time, and I'm delighted that the steps we have taken to increase compliance over the last year are more and more becoming business as usual. In mid-June, we launched our new customer self-service platform, IEG4. This replaced a number of older systems and will enable the council to significantly improve its online offer to residents. Over the next month, we will be increasing our promotion of the new system and encouraging residents to sign up to more online services. At this time, Mr. Mayor, we await the government's white paper into devolution, which we understand is due to be published in the autumn. September is a muted month. We will obviously digest the contents with our neighbouring councils and will consider how we can ensure we are best placed to secure the required increase in investment and focus the East Midlands requires. As you will be aware, improving rail connectivity between Melton and Nottingham has been a long-standing aspiration of mine. And building on the work we undertook last year alongside our MP, we recently submitted a bid to government for further funding to develop the business case and created direct access through Syston. I look forward to receiving the outcome from this bid later in the year. Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I will now turn to the latest development in relation to the Relief Road, or MMDR. Firstly, I would like to say a huge thank you to the officers of this council for their incredible work to deliver a robust and credible master plan within the timescales required. At a time when the vast majority of our resources were being refocused on reopening to the crisis, responding to the crisis, we maintained a commitment to this priority and did not let ourselves, or more importantly, our community down. I am, though, very frustrated and disappointed by the approach taken by Leicestershire County Council and their attempt to blame this council for their decision not to accept the Housing Infrastructure Fund. From the outset, I must start by reminding everyone that they are the Highways Authority and they are the Education Authority. We have worked with them and will continue to do so. But the bottom line is that if they choose not to accept the Housing Infrastructure Fund, then it is a matter for them and something for which they must accept responsibility. At this time, Mr. Mayor, it is worth reminding ourselves of what has taken place to get us to this point with the MMDR. In October 2018, our local plan was adopted, which included the 3 parts of the relief road, but no secondary school. Even before the ink was dry on our local plan, the County Council massively increased their requirements for developer contributions for education, which created a need for additional primary schools and another secondary school, which were not in the original plan. Inevitably, this put huge pressure on viability, but we have worked with them to overcome this, and in November 2019, we agreed the basis of a risk-shared agreement to support infrastructure costs. We understood that everything was then in place for the housing infrastructure funding to be secured. But in February 2020, the goalposts changed again, and they now needed the master plan to be completed before they would accept the HIF money. Even in the middle of the current crisis, we diverted resources to accelerate delivery of the master plan, which we did on time and to an excellent standard. Now they tell us that is not enough, and we have to provide a guarantee on developer contributions. So, what exactly does a guarantee mean? Up to now, they haven't told us. But what I can say, in the last 5 years, Melton Borough Council has secured over £32 million towards the County Council services and infrastructure. This compares to just £3 million secured for all other agencies, including ourselves, during that time. £25 million of this is for the MMDR and education. Of the 55 Section 106s agreements processed during that time, there are only 2 where the County Council's full requests have not been met, and the value of these was very low. In financial terms, over the last 5 years, Melton Borough Council has secured 99.5% of what the County Council has asked for. If this level of past performance doesn't provide the required assurance of guarantee, what would? 99.7? 99.9? What more do they want? And that has a question mark after. As recently as April, Mr. Mayor, we offered to form a joint delivery team with the County Council so that we could work together on securing the HIF. This was rejected by the County Council. We remain ready to refresh the current viability appraisal and work with the County Council on a development strategy, which could be completed in a matter of weeks. We are happy to review options which would assist with improving viability and which could still see the HIF money secured. Melton Borough Council has done everything it possibly can do to deliver the road, and to suggest otherwise is both illogical and totally unjustified. This is the County Council's responsibility, and they cannot just pass the buck, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I feel I also have to share my disappointment in relation to the conduct of the Leicestershire County Council colleagues at their recent cabinet meeting, where this was discussed. I know some of you have watched the link and most of you concur with what we saw. At a time of national crisis, we should all be working together for the benefit of our communities, not seeking to disrespect, criticising or undermine each other. There is a £30 million investment in Melton at stake, and seeing County Council Cabinet members smirking and making some highly unprofessional comments about Melton Borough Council during their meeting was totally inappropriate and unjustified. And I'm also concerned by some of their reasons their cabinet gave for not accepting the HIF money. The portfolio holder for finance and resources suggested that the development of the master plan had not involved the developers. Mr. Mayor, this is just plain wrong, and the main developers were fully engaged in the process and supportive of the preferred options. With the question of viability such a key consideration, it is deeply troubling that his decision was made on the basis of this inaccurate understanding. Equally concerning was the suggestion by the former portfolio holder for Children's Services that the level of developer contributions associated with a live undetermined planning application was a justification for refusing the HIF money. As mentioned previously, our performance in securing infrastructure funding for the County Council is impeccable, with 99.5% of requests secured over the last 5 years. There is simply no justification for refusing the HIF money on this basis. Mr. Mayor, only last week I raised this very point with the County Council's portfolio holder for highways at the recent Members Advisory Group and challenged him to explain his own reasoning for rejecting the money and what he was going to do about the risks it creates for infrastructure delivery more generally across Leicestershire. He did not respond, Mr. Mayor. It was ironic that the county's deputy leader articulated precisely the challenge faced by planning authorities like ourselves, sharing his experience of developers wanting to renegotiate Section 106 agreements. We certainly recognise that challenge, and I would also welcome his thoughts on how we might prevent that in future, if we are to provide the kind of guarantee seemingly required by the County Council. We fully appreciate, Mr. Mayor, the significant risk faced by the County Council in relation to infrastructure funding. But as I have demonstrated, we have done all we can to support them, delivering our local plan, establishing the basis for a risk share agreement, securing 99.5% of developer contributions they have asked for, and completing the master plan on time. If the County Council choose not to accept the HIF money, it is their decision, Mr. Mayor, and their failure to follow through on the commitment they made. If that is what they want to do, they need to grow up, be brave, and accept the responsibility for that decision rather than blaming us or anyone else. We continue, Mr. Mayor, to liaise with Homes England, and even now, we stand ready to work with the County Council in good faith to secure the HIF money and deliver the road. It is not too late, and we await their response, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. That was very clear. Well done. Thank you. Public question time. There were no questions received. We now receive reports from the Cabinet or recommendations referred to the Council for determination.
Apologies, Councillor Graham. Before you move on, can I just bring to your attention that Councillor Holmes has her hand raised?
Oh, you can. I didn't know. Under which point? The leader's speech or?
Yes, under the leader's speech.
Under the leader's speech. Councillor Holmes. All I have is Councillor Holmes written up here. I don't have a face.
That's
or
all right. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you, yes.
I just want to say thank you to the leader for obviously taking so much time looking at agriculture, as he knows in his area and the deputy leader's area, there are very many thousands and thousands of pounds being leached away. And so I'm so pleased that he has taken that on board. If he needs any help, in fact, I will give him the help that he probably needs for local farmers and how much they have lost and how much they are losing at this time. I have the data, so I hope that he would want to take it on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Leader, have you got any comments to make on that?
Yeah, I would like to thank Councillor Holmes for that very kind offer, and almost certainly, well, I will get back to her at some point once I have a date when I meet the chair of the Melton NFU and the secretary of the NFU branch. Thank you very much, Councillor Holmes.
That's all right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we also have Councillor Cumbers with her hand raised.
Councillor Cumbers. Councillor Cumbers.
Councillor Cumbers is still muted. If you just bear with me for one moment, I'll see if I can. There we go, Councillor Cumbers.
Thank you. How pleased I was to hear that very sensible suggestion that we should meet with the NFU. We know how important agriculture is to everybody, especially around here. But and it's a shocking state that that agriculture is in. I always try to buy sort of local food, and I hope other people do as well. But and I hope that there'll be some ways of helping the farming industry through this to help get them back to their normal thing, with the cows and the beef and whatever, but as well to help them diversify, but they are important employers, important part of the borough, and we really must do as much as we can. And again, I think that's an excellent idea to meet with the NFU to work out how we can take these things forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that I want?
Councillor Orson just has his hand raised.
Yeah.
Just thanks to Councillor Compass for recognising the seriousness of the situation that farmers and agriculture is going through in Melton Mowbray at this time. So thank you again, Pat, for your support.
Thank you. Public question time. There were no questions received. To receive reports from the Cabinet on recommendations referred to the Council for determination. For this item, I will seek a mover and a seconder. Following debate, we will then undertake a roll call vote, where the Chief Executive will request each member in turn to confirm his or her vote and confirm the numbers at the end. I have down Councillor de Burgh will move the report and provide a brief introduction. Councillor de Burgh.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're clear now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to present the annual report on Council's Treasury management activities for 2019 to 2020, following its scrutiny by Cabinet last week. Members, for those of you who may wonder, Treasury management is exactly that, managing our resources effectively to maximise on any benefits that can be achieved from it. I'm delighted to report that our team are particularly good at it, as demonstrated by the consistent overperformance against a reference group made up of other public bodies. Councillors, I'm very happy to report that the investment return for the year averaged out at Sorry, we lost something there. I'll go back to that. Councillors, I'm very happy to report that the investment return for the year averaged out at 1.25%, which was an increase over 2018-19 and generated an additional £138,000 more than was budgeted for across our GF General Fund and HRA Fund accounts. Like me, I think you will be delighted to learn that our activities in 2019-20 produced a total of £310,000 in income. It's a very creditable contribution for which we should thank the Treasury management team. Regrettably, I have to report that the outlook for 2020-21 is very challenging, with COVID impacting negatively on investment returns from reduced rates and the lower cash balances we will have available for investment. Mr. Mayor, on that salutary note, I move that Council approves the Treasury Management Annual Report for 2019-20, identified at agenda item 7.1, which has been passed to them by Cabinet for approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well, Councillor Orson, will you second the motion?
Yeah, very pleased to move 7.1 Cabinet Report, Treasury Management Annual Report, Combined Report. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I will now open the debate and invite members to use the raise hand function to indicate their wish to speak. Have we got any raised hands?
I can confirm there are no raised hands.
But Mayor, to confirm, no members are indicating to speak. I would say we will proceed to the vote. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, as usual, I shall read out your names in alphabetical order and ask you to confirm whether you are for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Baines, I understand, is absent. Councillor Binlos.
For.
Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown.
Can you come back to Councillor Brown at the finish?
Yeah. Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor de Burgh.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy. Councillor Glancy.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Illingworth.
For.
Councillor Lumley.
For.
Councillor Orson.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
And Councillor Brown.
For.
Thank you. That is unanimous.
Right. That's been passed unanimously. Thank you very much. 7.2 General Fund Revenue Account 2019-20 Provisional Year-End Position. For this item, I'll seek a mover and a seconder, and after any debate, we'll proceed to a roll call vote administered by the Chief Executive. Councillor Byrne, again, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, with the many pressures on the council at this time, it's been a tremendous achievement that the accounts have now been closed for 2019-20. The year-end position, with a slight underspend against budget on general expenses and a larger underspend on special expenses, is very welcome news. However, the financial impact on the council of the COVID crisis has been and remains significant, and we're going to have to exercise extreme caution in our activities until we know where we're going with it, bottom line. In spite of having 3 tranches of funding from government, there is still much uncertainty regarding the residual amount the council may have to fund from its own reserves. In addition, we expect there will be the longer term impact that we'll encounter in debt collection and how much the council will need to cover of this. You'll recall the details set out at the all-member development session held on the 14th of July. Yes, we have our corporate priorities and our working balance reserves as unallocated reserves. In other words, they represent our available cash. The working balance is the minimum reserve which the council needs to provide for risk-assessed eventualities. In addition to this, any depletion of the CPR will severely restrict the council's ability to invest in future projects or meet the non-recurring costs of any change, initiatives, saving programs that we may wish to put together. Additionally, under the Local Government Act 1988, it's illegal for planned expenditure in a current or future year to exceed budgeted resources and available reserves. So what are we doing to prepare for an expected massive demand against those reserves? Well, we're carefully monitoring all COVID-19 expenditure and income loss to ensure that we can account for it as unplanned, not of our choice expenditure. We're looking at what savings options we can make and use to mitigate any unfunded COVID costs. And we will also be looking at any unspent budgets at the end of Q1 that can be released in order to help manage the impact of the council's finances, or the impact on the council's finances. Additionally, Cabinet has put forward a recommendation that £300,000 of the business rates equalisation reserve, not needed for now, be reallocated to assist with unfunded COVID costs, should it be necessary. This equalisation reserve, which was established to help mitigate the financial impact of variations in business rates income that can raise up and down over the course of time due to the nature of the business rates retention scheme. In recent years, this has increased and is at a level that is higher than in normal circumstances we would require. As such, it's considered more appropriate at this time, with the pressures due to COVID, to reallocate a portion to offset the financial implications of the crisis. It should be noticed, however, that this action, whilst helping to provide necessary funding to support the COVID response and recovery, will reduce the financial resilience of the authority to cope with any large reduction in business rates income in the future. However, the decline in business rates income will be a national issue, and one the government will need to consider when it assesses the financial settlement for 2021-22 and later years. Councillors, the situation is ever changing and is being kept under constant review, with ongoing lobbying for sufficient funding support from the government, but the situation remains challenging. Mr. Mayor, on that note, I move that Council approves the General Fund revenue account for 2019-20, provisional year end position as at 7.2 on the agenda, which was passed to them by Cabinet for approval, and the recommendation that Council further approves the allocation of the £300,000 of the business rates equalisation reserve to support any unfounded COVID-19 expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Orson?
Yep, very pleased to second Ronnie on the SEM2 cover report, Cabinet General Fund additional year, and the £300,000. I must admit, didn't quite catch all your phrase there, Ronnie, but how you used it, but very pleased to second it anyway.
Thank you. Do any members wish to speak? You got any?
No,
No.
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm there are no
In
hands
which
raised.
case, I will move for Chief Executive to request each member in turn confirm his or her vote.
Mr. Mayor, so once again, members will undertake the roll call. Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Binlos, for, against, or abstaining, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers. Councillor Cumbers. I'll come back to you, Councillor Cumbers. Councillor de Burgh.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer-Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Illingworth.
For.
Councillor Lumley.
For.
Councillor Orson.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
And just back to Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Thank you. That is 24 for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Again, it's unanimous and carried. Thank you all very much. Item 8, review of a contract procedure rules. For this item, I'll seek a mover and a seconder. After any debate, we'll proceed to a roll call vote administered by the Chief Executive. Now, it has Councillor Burr, but I believe Councillor Freer-Jones is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to point out, although this falls into my portfolio because it's constitutional, it's very much related also to Councillor de Bell's portfolio as finance and procurement lead, and therefore it crosses over both of our remits, just to let people know about the change in the proposer. Also like to suggest to alert members to the legislative and technical aspects of this report, this constitutional element of this report, and upon any more technical elements that questions come forward, I'll probably refer to an officer to help support me answer any of the questions that come up. So moving on to the agenda item, these new rules have been subject to extensive review by the Welland Procurement to ensure that they reflect the changes in the law, best practice and changes required that result from internal reviews on how the council operates. There has also been extensive engagement with the internal stakeholders. The contract procedure rules are supported by the procurement toolkit, which is intended to be a reference point for officers when undertaking a procurement exercise. Cabinet also approved the 2020 to 2024 annual procurement appraisal and framework on the 15th of July 2020, which sets out how the council will promote effective procurement across the council, as well as summarising how the council will adopt a strategic approach to sustainable procurement based on national and regional drivers, best practice and recommendations on sustainable procurement. Subject to approval, the updated contract procedure rules will come into effect from the 1st of September 2020 and will be incorporated to the Constitution accordingly. This deferred effective date will allow sufficient time for council officers to receive training. I move that council approves the updated contract procedure rules as attached in Appendix A with an implementation date of the 1st of September 2020 to allow sufficient time for council officers to receive the training as I previously mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Orson, will you second the motion? Councillor Orson? Can I have a seconder for the item?
I've said I second it.
Oh, you have? It didn't come through my computer. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right. We now open it to debate. Does any member wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, we have Councillor Pritchett and Councillor Evans.
Right. We take Councillor Pritchett first.
Can you take Councillor Evans first, and then I'll speak after, please? Thank you.
We'll take Councillor Evans first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to move an amendment, and the amendment is after the sentence, well, take the full stop out from receive training and put in that this document is referred back to Audit and Standards Committee for review to include the risks and benefits to Melton Borough Council as hosts of the Welland procurement and providing procedures to member councils.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder for that amendment?
I believe and hope that Don is ready in the wings.
Oh, that's why he wanted to get second.
Yes.
Method.
I'll second and speak on the reasoning for that, if it's okay.
Yes.
When appropriate.
You please do.
Is it now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I just ask the proposer whether they're happy to accept the amendment. Councillor Freer-Jones.
Can I refer to Adele, please, and just get some advice on that, because I don't have any answer to referring it back to ordinance standard, because it's come before council. So I'd expect us to be debating it as it stands, rather than referring it back to another committee. That's sort of going back to the old committee structure that we had before, when things go round and round. So that's what it suggests to me. But I'd like to ask for some advice from Adele on what she would perceive that amendment to mean to me and to us, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask for Councillor Evans to repeat it. My internet is unstable and it managed to cut out at that particular point, which was helpful. So if you could repeat for me, Councillor Evans.
Here we go again. Are you ready? Do you want it faster or slower?
Slower, please.
And that this document is referred back to the Audit and Standards Committee for review, to include the risks and benefits to Melton Borough Council as host of the Welland procurement, and providing procedures to member councils.
Okay, so I think that actually that would be an amendment. It's not necessarily an amendment, it's an amendment to the document. So you're not happy with the contents of the document, in which case you would have to either accept the document or you would have to reject the document. So if your amendment was, for example, to change that and say that you weren't approving it today, which you wouldn't be able to do as well, because that's a negative, then that would be something. But I think that you're actually asking to change the document within the appendix.
I wouldn't say that, Adele. What we're doing is we're asking the experts, which obviously are on the Audit and Standards Committee, to just check the risks and benefits to Melton Borough Council of the Welland procurement. It's obviously a safety net for introducing it, not a change to it. It's not, we're not going to change it. We just want to assess the risks and benefits and make certain they're covered in the future when it comes in September.
Okay, so yeah, so I think that if you're seeking another amendment, so if you're keeping the amendment but you're adding another one with an amendment, which would be that a review be undertaken of the contract procedure rules to assess the risks and benefits, then that would be acceptable.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks, Adele.
Okay.
Do you want me to start, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor,
Do you want me to?
Can I just bring to your attention that Councillor Orson also has his hand raised at this point as well.
If I could just say, the Mayor is frozen at this moment in time. I think it's important that he's involved with this.
Is he frozen?
Yes, that is correct. Councillor Orson, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I think we're lost on these now.
Can't see him.
Can I suggest that in his absence that we just wait for 2 minutes, and in that time we'll just wait for 2 minutes to see if he can re-establish his connection, and then we'll continue with the debate rather than moving on to the Deputy Mayor at this point.
Oh, I'm back.
You're back.
I'm sorry, I completely lost everybody. Where are we?
I think it's me to go, isn't it?
Mr. Mayor, if I can just confirm, so
Yeah.
we just waited for 2 minutes whilst you were reconnecting. So we are at the point where you lost connection. So Councillor Pritchett was just about to speak with your permission.
Yes, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
It was intended that there were two parts to the amendment. The second part was that it was referred back to the audit committee to deal with the totality of issues members raised during debate. A little bit of background: there were frauds at the council in 2013 and 14, and then the issue of the procedures were reviewed twice, and now they need to be reviewed again. In terms of being the host of the 6 or 7 staff for Welland Procurement, at this time it's not clear to me what the service level agreement contains and the risk management, and it talks about these procedures being rolled out to other councils to accept, and the risks are considerable. In any way, moving on to the procedures, there was no indication that the recent 8th of June announcement on the updated controls required by the government into local authority procurement have been included. There's not enough on the specification approval, capital, including capital variations, requisitioning, authorising the management of revenue contracts by lead officers such as waste and council, adding new suppliers to the accounts, lack of segregation of duties. And the first thing you normally do in these processes, you have a flow chart, an algorithm of who does what. And then from that, you get your procedures, and the chronology is not clear. And on top of all that, there are 15, I've got 15 other detailed points that relate to under 10,000, you only have one quote. Honesty comes in at 50,000. You don't have to declare an interest under 50,000. It's discretionary. It doesn't cover the external agencies doing contracting on our behalf. And we had conflict and issues with Beckville Court between some of the consultants of specification and payments. You have to go up to 50k for a small £5 million organisation for your schedule of contracts. There's lack of clarification of who is doing what between officers and buyers. That's it in a nutshell, and they need more work. And if it is approved tonight, members, I would prefer that the actual review continues rather than cast these in stone, because there are considerable issues based on my professional experience with these, and I can't accept them in this standard. The auditors, the Director of Corporate Services was very kindly gave me information of what the auditors have said. They issued a series of emails from an auditor rather than a memo or report, which is not unusual, and have said that they're better than before, I think was the conclusion. Why it's taken 2 or 3 procurement managers to get to this stage, I don't know. So my view on this is, if it's better than before, go forward, but let's not cast it in stone, and let's make sure it, and some of it is in the drafting, lack of clarity as well, some of it. But as I say, on my experience, I can't accept these, and I'll have to have my vote against if it comes to that. My name to be recorded. Thank you. End of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Orson still has his hand raised. I don't know if he still would like to.
Councillor Orson. Councillor Orson.
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. If you look at paragraph 3.3, over the last 8 months, Welland Procurement has reviewed the current contract procedure rules to ensure they reflect changes in law, best practice, and changes required that result from internal reviews on how the council operate. Over the page, you will see the review has been wide, and it does reflect best practice. So I will have absolutely no problem in voting for the motion Recommendation 1 on page 1.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anybody else wish to speak?
Can I come back, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Jones. Yeah.
I really need a point of clarification because initially, obviously, the proposer came with a slight amendment to the recommendation, and then the seconder came through with a lot more information and a lot more sort of critical points of the report itself, which I believe could have been brought before now to an officer if there was that much detailed in it that the councillor was unhappy with. But it's confused me as to what the actual amendment is now. Because am I being asked to accept what Councillor Evans said, or am I being asked to accept everything that Councillor Pritchett said? Please, just some clarification on that.
Councillor Pritchett was coming back, I believe, but could either Councillor Evans or Councillor Pritchett answer?
Yes, I can understand Alison finding that difficult. I was just covering two bases there. I was second the point Chris was making, and then I'm saying if it fails and it goes to a vote, I've said my piece and I will vote against and have my name recorded as being voted against. And you haven't had a chance to review this until it arrived in the post, Alison. The audit committee have not been included in the 8 months in the review of these drafts.
And thanks for the clarification. So we're just looking for what Chris said to put amendment to say that Audit and Standard would just like to look at the risks and benefits to Melton because we're the host. So taking advice from Adele, it doesn't seem to alter the amendment that much. But it adds a little bit of clarification and security to what we're doing. Is that correct? Have I understood that correct, Adele?
That's correct. As far as I'm concerned, that's how I see it.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I could help with this in a way, in that there's a report later on the agenda, which is the Constitutional Review Working Group, that would have a working plan of the Constitution. And what we would do with the contract procedure rules is, because it's such a living document, that we do regularly review it. And what I would also ask is for members to put any comments or any issues that they have with the Constitution to me, so that we can look at those as a group. And then that would be referred through to council. So not wishing to change the amendment or, you know, take away anybody's rights, but that may be the route around it, is that the opposition leader puts those comments to me as monitoring officer, and it's considered as part of the Constitutional Review Working Group if that was to be established tonight.
I'm happy with that. I'm much more happy with that because obviously this has come at a late notice, and something that I'm very looking at Constitution is something that's quite in depth and quite technical. So I don't want to make any decisions on the hoof without contemplating it in more detail. So I'm much happier that we look at it from a constitutional review point like that and keep the recommendation as it stands, if that helps.
Councillor Evans, you're happy with that? The way forward? You're muted, I think. We can't hear. Well, I can't hear.
My concern, obviously, is that it gets the Constitution Review Committee is a very small committee with limited expertise in this area. Obviously, the Audit and Standards Committee is meant to be the people who are experts in this area, who look at finance with the portfolio holder and look through this. It makes sense to me not to take it to such a small committee with such a detailed, let's be honest, it's a massive document. If the Constitutional Review Committee are going to look at the document, which is something like 50 pages long, and there are lots of them around the Constitution, then they could be there forever. I mean, this is too much detail, I would have thought, for the Constitution Review Committee. It's something that surely should be referred back to the group that's used to working in this area with facts and figures and finance.
So the amendment, your amendment stands. Yeah. So we take.
Mr. Mayor, can I clarify the amendment as I see it? And Councillor Evans, perhaps you can clarify. I didn't think that you were changing that it would be approved today, but it would be that the council approves the updated council procedure rules as at Appendix A, with an implementation date of the 1st of September to allow sufficient time for council officers to receive training, and the Audit and Standards Committee review the contract procedure rules within the next 6 months to consider whether it addresses the risks and benefits to Melton Borough Council.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
More members understand that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. Right. Anybody else want to speak?
I can put my
Mr.
hand up.
Mayor, we have Councillor Holmes and Councillor Pritchett.
Right. Councillor Holmes first.
Oh, well, it was just that I was going to put it down because this is what I thought that was all about, and I'm delighted that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm quite delighted that actually Councillor Freer-Jones has taken that on board, because all we're ever trying to do is get the best for this borough, aren't we? And this is so important that we want to get it right, not right in the future, but right now. Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you. I'm very happy with Adele's suggestion. The indication is that these are better than before. They go live and people work on them, and then they're tweaked forward as appropriate with this group, and whatever other process reviews them after that. It's a win-win for me, this one. Thank you.
So the addition of these words turn this into a substantive motion. Anybody else want to speak? We will vote on that. We do that on a roll call.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So, with your permission,
you start on the.
Yeah, with your permission, Mr. Mayor. Oh, apologies. Yes, yeah. With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'll undertake the roll call, and just to clarify, my understanding it is that members will be voting on the substantive motion as amended. To approve the contract procedure rules, but with that additional clause relating to the reference and review undertaken by the Audit and Standards Committee. So that's my understanding. That's what I believe you're about to vote on. Okay, if I can undertake the roll call on that basis. Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Bindloss.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter.
Against.
Sorry, Councillor Carter, could you repeat that, please? Against. Okay, thank you. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor de Burl.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer-Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Sorry. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Illingworth.
For.
Councillor Lumley.
For.
Councillor Orson. Councillor Orson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Stedman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I have 22 for and 2 against.
Thank you very much. So that amendment is being carried. We now.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I've got a bit confused. Can I, if it's possible, change my vote to a yes, please? Sorry.
I'm sure the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Yes, I changed
can I
that.
change mine, please, as well?
I've got a big
yeah, I will do. Thank you, Councillor Bidloss. So that is 24 for the motion, Mr. Mayor.
That's great. Okay, I'm very lucky. I begin with a G. I feel very sorry for those with ABCs as their surnames. So then that becomes the what's it motion, doesn't it? Or we vote on that again.
No, Mr. Mayor, I believe I will just look to the monitoring officer. I think that was a substantive motion because it was accepted by the proposer, so that is carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Next item, the scrutiny committee. For this item, I will seek a mover and a seconder following any debate. I shall then confirm that the report has been noted and move to the next item. Councillor Cumbers. Councillor Cumbers.
I'm just going to see if I can unmute Mr. Mayor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to scrutiny members, especially Vice Chair Robert Bindloss, for their enthusiasm and hard work, and also thank officers, especially Natasha, Catherine and Helen, for their excellent support. And now about the report. It's considered good practice for scrutiny to produce an annual report, and it's a good opportunity for the report to explain the work of the committee through the year and also to report on outcomes and proposals for improvement for the coming municipal year, and that's the year we are now in. The committee reviewed and approved the report at our meeting in March. I hope that members will agree that in our inaugural year, we have laid a sound foundation for the work of scrutiny, including challenging Cabinet in an open, friendly and constructive way, and developing relationships with officers to ensure an outcomes-based focus on improving delivery of services to our community. There's still much to do. The report details some proposals for the coming year, and we will also continue to respond to feedback on how we can improve and develop. We are currently developing our annual work plan. Unfortunately, this has been delayed by the current national crisis, but we began this work at a very productive scrutiny workshop last week. And we hope to finalise the work plan at our September meeting. I'm pleased to be able to highlight the work of our committee and to increase the profile of scrutiny across the council and externally. And now I would welcome comments from members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bindloss, would you like to second the motion?
Yes, I'd be delighted to second that, Mayor.
Thank you. I now open the debate. I invite members to use the raise hand function to indicate their wish to speak. Have we got any raised hands?
We have Councillor Higgins and Councillor Orson, Mr. Mayor.
We'll take Councillor Higgins first.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Cumbers, for that introduction there. As the first portfolio holder to present to the your new committee, can everyone hear me okay, or is it?
No, I'm finding very echoey.
Okay, let me see. Is that any better? Is that any better? No. I will pass at the moment, Mr. Mayor.
I tell you what, we'll go to Councillor Orson and come back to you. Councillor Orson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure Mr. Higgins, Councillor Higgins, will be a lot better next time round. It's just to say my thank you to the whole of the scrutiny panel. You've heard me say times that the cabinet and scrutiny go hand in hand, and they both make each other stronger. It really is a partnership of work. Scrutiny has done some fantastic work for us, and certainly I've got to thank every single member who's taken part in the panels, and I look forward to more challenging work with them in the future, but they've been very beneficial to myself. There's no doubt about that. I learn, I always check their agendas, and I look forward to the next time I'm called and invited to meet them. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and over to you, Councillor Higgins, if you can speak now.
I'll just, Councillor Evans, he keeps shaking his head so I can see it. Yeah, it's not working. Okay, I'll pass.
I hope it's not days of COVID. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. All right. So that I'm going to confirm no members or officers are indicating a request to speak.
Can sorry.
Yes.
Can I just thank the leader for his comments, and it's been really great working with Cabinet, and I'm sure that that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cummins. And I confirm the recommendation has been moved and seconded and noted, and that no vote is required. The review of political balance. For this item, I'll seek a mover and a seconder. Any debate will proceed to a roll call vote administered by the Chief Executive. There's going to be a brief introduction to the report. Will be provided by Adele Wiley, the monitoring officer. So Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on the 22nd of June 2020, I was notified that Councillor Lumley confirmed that he will no longer be part of a political group and therefore will be a non-aligned member. This notification triggered a legislative duty to review the allocation of seats to political balance as soon as practicable, which is tonight. Members will recall that a properly constituted group is 2 or more members. The council has 2 groups, being the Conservative group and the Opposition group. Legislation states that only those members who form a properly constituted group shall be included within political balance calculations. The calculations therefore do not include non-aligned members. The council's duty is to determine the allocation of seats to be filled by appointments by the authority, except the Cabinet and the Licensing Committee. I would request that members refer to the table at paragraph 4.2, which shows the position agreed at the AGM when political balance was last confirmed. Using 38 as the total number of voting places across all committees, the final column shows the total number of places each group is entitled to, and members will note that the Conservative group had 30 seats and the Opposition group had 8 seats. As a result of the changes outlined, the Conservative group will be entitled to 29 seats and the Opposition group 9 seats. The Opposition group therefore gain a seat on the Planning Committee, as is shown in paragraph 4.3. Members may note that within 4.3, the seat allocations is correct. The total should be 29 for Conservative and 8 for Opposition. So that does say 30, whereas it should say 29. It also says 8, whereas it should say 9. And that will be amended on the published report and doesn't affect the recommendations for members tonight. A consequential result of Councillor Lumley resigning from the Conservative group is that he will no longer sit on the Licensing Committee nor the Audit and Standards Committee as a substitute. These seats remain Conservative seats, and therefore the leader of the Conservative group may appoint a member to take those seats. However, Councillor Lumley was also appointed as chair of the Licensing Committee at the annual council in May 2020. Council therefore requested to appoint a new chairman for the Licensing Committee from its current membership, as shown at paragraph 4.5. Recommendations 1, 2 and 3 are contained on page 101 of the published agenda. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now I've got proposed Councillor Orson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm very happy to move the recommendations at 1, 2 and 3 recommendations. Effectively, the monitoring officer has said everything that needs to be said. It is what it is, and I look for a seconder. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Higgins, you still
hopefully
not much.
Reset. Is it still not working?
No.
No, okay. Well, I will second it.
Second it anyway. That's great. So the motion has been proposed and seconded. I'll open the debate. Members to use raise hand function. Does anybody wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I can confirm there's no hands raised.
Fine. So the no member officers are indicating a request to speak. The Chief Executive to request each member in turn to confirm his or her vote and confirm the numbers at the end. So Chief Executive, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As before, members for, against or abstain. Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter. Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor de Burgh.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy,
For.
Councillor Graham,
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins,
For.
Councillor Holmes,
For.
Councillor Illingworth,
Abstain.
Councillor Lumley,
For.
Councillor Orson,
For.
Councillor Pearson,
For.
Councillor Posnett,
For.
Councillor Pritchett,
For.
Councillor Smedley,
For.
Councillor Steadman,
For.
Councillor Wilkinson,
Abstain.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Mr. Mayor, I have 23 for, 1 against, and 2 abstentions. Oh, sorry, that's not quite right. Sorry, 21 for, 21 against, and 2 abstentions. Oh. Mr. Mayor, have we lost the mayor?
Mr. Mayor, you need to unmute.
I will. There we are. Is that better?
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. So just to repeat, we have 21 for, 1 against, and 2 abstentions.
That's it. No, that's fine. So that has been carried. Thank you. The establishment of Constitution Review Working Group. I seek a mover and a seconder, and then we will proceed again to a roll call vote. Councillor Freer-Jones. Right to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the annual council meeting held on the 14th of May 2020, the leader of the council committed to the establishment of a Constitution Review Working Group, which would be responsible for regular review of the Constitution, ensuring that it remains relevant, accurate and lawful. The report before you and the accompanying terms of reference specify that the group should have cross-party membership to ensure that there is representation across the whole council. It is proposed that the group will look at both general and more specific reviews of the Constitution. The group will undertake these reviews in light of changes to legislation, amendments to council policy and procedure, and accepted best practice. The group will formulate reports and draft changes to the Constitution, which will then be considered by the council. The proposal is to also include the member development group in the remit of the group to allow for efficiencies. Details on the purpose, scope and composition of the group are set out in the report and the terms of reference at Appendix A. I'll be happy to take questions or comments from members on the report, and I'm happy to propose the report to council for approval. So that's a recommendation at point 1, 2, 3 and 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freer-Jones. Councillor Orson, will you second?
Yeah, very much so. Very pleased to second 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Thank you. Open it for debate. Any councillor wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Evans is indicating he would like to speak.
Councillor Evans. Councillor Evans. Is he there?
Yeah, I'm now there. I was waiting for the unmute function there. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment to points 2 and 3. And the wording would be to add onto the sentences, subject to it correctly addressing the political balance with a membership of 3 Conservatives and 1 opposition member.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of your.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Me or whether that, I don't know whether it was you or it was me. Probably me. I'm having bad.
Could be anybody. When we got poor old councillor, Lee Higgins sounding more like a Dalek than a human being. Right, add to points 2 and 3 on the recommendation, subject to it correctly addressing the political balance with a membership of 3 Conservatives and 1 opposition member.
Would like those words entered in.
Yes, on both points 2 and 3.
Point 2 and 3. Have you got a seconder for that?
I hope I have. I hope Elaine Holmes, although I can't see her, is still there. Is she still there? Yes, she
Yeah,
is.
I am here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to look at both things.
Well, we can't see you.
Well, I know I've not been able to be seen all night, but I don't know why. Yeah, I second that.
I'll
Whatever.
second it, Kath. Great.
Yeah,
There we
but
have.
but I don't know why I can't be seen. I can't be seen by me. Whether other people could see me, I don't know.
No, they can't.
No, we can't.
Why is it then it can't see me?
I don't know. Anyway,
Oh,
the amendment has been proposed and seconded. Does anybody like to speak on it?
Could I just speak to it first of all?
Yes, sir.
An explanation, Mayor.
Yeah.
Obviously, my view is that this should be obviously a representative of all the councillors, but we obviously at this point in time also have 2 aligned members, and whether it be Councillor Lumley or Councillor Illingworth who is appointed, they are unaligned and therefore not in a group, and Councillor Lumley couldn't represent Councillor Illingworth for obvious reasons, and vice versa. Obviously, as an opposition independent group, we're more than happy to take unaligned members' views, but I think to keep it as small as possible and politically balanced would be the best way forward for this council at this point in time. Because as I pointed out, if either of those 2 were to be on it, they cannot represent, for obvious reasons, the other person because they are not a group. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? Yes, Councillor Alston, I can see your hand in the
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting against the amendment. A couple of reasons. Number one, I never like working groups with an even number. I always like odd numbers. 4 is a difficult number. 5 is always has a balance if it comes to a vote. It is only a working group. It might never come to a vote, but you're never quite for sure. The other thing is, I think the clue was in Councillor Freer-Jones' introduction where she said working group has to reflect the whole council. As Councillor Evans does accept, there are 2 non-aligned members. As I understand it, they have had a conversation between them, and Simon Lumley has certainly emailed the monitoring officer to say that he is quite happy with Councillor Illingworth. Thank you, Simon is nodding yes. Councillor Illingworth to take the place on the working group. So I will vote against the amendment.
Thank you very much. Any other councillor wish to speak?
No, Mr. Mayor, there's no further councillors indicating they wish to
In which
speak.
case we'll go straight to the Chief Executive for a roll call vote on the amendment.
Thank you. Yes,
And
Mr. Mayor, we are voting on.
Yeah. Could you just confirm the wording of the amendment?
Yeah, just to clarify my understanding of the wording of the amendment, it is referencing to item 3 and 4, bullet point 3 and 4, where it refers to the addition of the clause subject to correctly addressing the political balance with a membership of 3 Conservatives and 1 member of the opposition group. I just looked to Councillor Evans to confirm that is accurate.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So on that basis, Mr. Mayor, we'll proceed to the votes. And again, members, I'll be looking for you to confirm whether you're for, against, or abstaining on the amendment only at this stage. So Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Binlos.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Carter. Councillor Carter. Councillor Carter, I think you're on mute. I'll come back to you in a moment if I may. Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Chandler. Councillor Chandler. I'll come back to Councillor Chandler in a moment. Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
Against.
Councillor de Burl.
Against.
Councillor Douglas.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
Against.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer-Jones.
Against.
Councillor Glancy,
Against.
Councillor Graham,
Against. Sorry, against.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins, Councillor Holmes,
For, but I have got my hand up before and I'd like to make a statement why. For.
Well, the vote started, isn't it? So
I know, but it's before. This was before, and I got my hand up before you
if
started.
Councillor Holmes, if I can conclude the vote. Councillor Illingworth,
Abstain.
Councillor Lumley,
Against.
Councillor Orson,
Against.
Councillor Pearson,
Against.
Councillor Posnett,
Against.
Councillor Pritchett,
For.
Councillor Smedley,
Against.
Councillor Steadman,
Against.
Councillor Wilkinson,
against.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Mr. Mayor, if you just give me a moment, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just confirm, because the Chief Executive's not gone back to Councillor Chandler, but I don't think that she is. I don't think that she is actually at the meeting right now, so I think her connection may have dropped out.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Adele. So in terms of who has voted at this point, Mr. Mayor, if you're happy to conclude the vote at this stage.
Yes, yeah.
That is 5 for, 17 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. So that has been lost. So we then return to the recommendation. Does anybody want to speak on the recommendation that's been proposed and seconded?
I just want to make a point.
Yes, Councillor Holmes. We can see you now.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm hopeless with these things, as you know. Yeah, when, as you've known, Mr. Mayor, that I have been a single councillor, even as an opposition, I've been a single councillor sometimes, and the LGA rules state that as a single councillor, an independent councillor, which these two councillors are, that they do have a choice to be on committees. And although they've only got a little bit, a hand or whatever, they have to be on committees. So somehow this seems to be a most peculiar situation. I've thought it right all along because I've been in this situation, and so I just find this a nonsense. And so I just don't understand where we're at. We seem to be making new rules as we go along, and I don't like it. I thought we actually lived I thought we lived in a decent society, and I'm not sure we're going the right way in some of the things we do. It's only because I have had this sort of problem myself, and I know that that is how it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there a question involved with that speech, or is that just a statement?
Well, only just can't understand why we are voting in this way. This is my personal opinion, because that is why I don't understand how these single councillors cannot be on committees. That's all I'm saying. On major committees, not just these little groups. I just don't understand whether or not on major committees. That's all. That is the question I'm really asking then, because with the LGA rules state right, that you can be.
Councillor Freer-Jones, would you like to answer that point or refer it to the monitoring officer?
I will answer the point, but if the councillor doesn't feel like the question is answered, then I'm happy to refer it to the monitoring officer. I just wanted to make the point that basically Councillor Holmes suggested this is a review working group. It's a working group to look at the Constitution And basically, it's to support the running of the council, the effective running of the council, and to look at the way that we're run. And a breadth of membership obviously has got to be an advantage to a task group such as this, not a disadvantage. So I don't support why you wouldn't want a breadth of membership on a group like this. So that would be my answer, really.
Thank you very much. We've had the motion proposed and seconded. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, look at the officers. No?
Mr. Mayor, we have Councillor Holmes still has her hand raised. I don't know if
No, I'm sorry. No, it's all right. I don't agree with it, but then that was my point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Lumley also has his hand raised.
Right, Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, due to a pending council investigation with me at the moment, I've chosen not to be on any committees at this time, but I do take on board what Councillor Holmes has said. She does make some very good points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, anybody else wish to speak? No?
No, Mr. Mayor, there are no further hands.
I'll refer back to the Chief Executive for a named vote again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we are now returning to the substantive motion. Again, for, against or abstain, please. Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Binlos.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter. Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Chandler. I believe Councillor Chandler may currently be absent, so we shall proceed. Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers. Councillor Cumbers. I'll return to Councillor Cumbers in a moment. Oh, thank you, Councillor Cumbers. Councillor de Burl.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
Abstain.
Councillor Illingworth.
Abstain.
Councillor Lumley.
For.
Councillor Orson.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
Abstain.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor Wood.
Abstain.
Okay, one moment, please, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I have 17 for, 2 against, and 4 abstentions. Just checking with my Democratic Service colleagues. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Good. Thank you very much. That is being carried. We now move on to the motions of motions. And for this item, I'll seek a mover and a seconder. And after any debate, we'll proceed to a roll call vote administered by the Chief Executive. The first motion, Councillor Orson will move and introduce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We agreed a very small amendment which really didn't change the motion, but did add the word discrimination. Do you have a note that what you would accept in that first sentence, Mr. Mayor?
I do somewhere. Where are we?
Mr. Mayor, I can actually display this on the screen if you wish.
Yes, reaffirm its commitment to promoting equality and fairness for all, and condemns any form, and all forms of racism and all discrimination wherever it is found.
Yep. I'd like to move that amendment, Mr. Mayor, with your permission. And then the motion is, as it reads, as a council, to challenge ourselves to do more and commit to do the following: develop our councillors and workforce and take time to learn about racism and understand the impact on our communities, deliver the objectives set out in the corporate equalities policy, ask the Council Scrutiny Committee to consider the government's recently published COVID-19, Understanding the Impact on the BME Communities report, and considers the implication for council services and the community, and make recommendation to Cabinet as to how the Cabinet should respond, and designate one elected member as an equalities champion who will work with the Council's Equality Lead Officer on the agenda, providing further challenge and support to officers, Cabinet and Council as appropriate, Mr. Mayor. Just like to say a few words on top of the motion. We do live in unprecedented times, but despite the heavy burden placed upon us all by this crisis, I am incredibly proud of how both our community and this council has responded. Melton is an amazing place, and it is a great privilege to live here and serve here. But we cannot ignore that COVID-19 will mean that the things which make our communities unequal will become even more pronounced. Now more than ever, we will need to redouble our efforts to challenge disadvantage and discrimination and ensure we lead from the front in seeking a fair and inclusive society for all. Mr. Mayor, the tragic death of George Floyd and the outpouring of concern expressed by millions across the country highlights the very real issues that many face and reminds us that we must not be complacent and that we must keep up the fight against racism, discrimination and equality. As a council, we need to continuously challenge ourselves by asking what we can do better. We must create an environment where everyone from any racial background feels able to speak up and expose racism with the confidence that the council will respond in a supportive and proactive way. We must better understand the views of those who feel disadvantaged in our society, and we must seek out and tackle discrimination and prejudice wherever it exists. We should not rewrite our history, but must learn from mistakes of the past and ensure they are not repeated. We must recognize the unconscious bias with us all, which will shape our thinking and influence our behaviors, and which can lead to inadvertent discrimination. And let's be clear, whether intentional or not, discrimination is discrimination, and we must all take responsibility for the impact of our own biases and prejudices and work to combat them. This council welcomes and values the diversity of its workforce, the people and the communities in the borough, and everyone who uses our services. The strength of our organisation comes from the richness of our diversity and all that we can learn from each other. We are all worthy of respect and dignity, and all of us should be judged by our actions, not by the colour of our skin or any other innate characteristic. We must work hard to promote inclusivity and celebrate diversity. I know that we are working hard to achieve this throughout the organisation, but we must continue to look for ways into which we can improve. Mr. Mayor, as leaders of this organisation, we must not shy away from difficult conversations, but rather foster an environment where questions can be asked and honest self-reflection encouraged. We should recognise these are complex issues and should approach them with gentle humility rather than arrogance and pomposity. We should encourage debate and discussion such that we collectively learn and develop rather than becoming more entrenched in our views. Mr. Mayor, through our collective dialogue and determination to do better and tackle discrimination, we can respond to any inadequacies within an optimistic spirit and positive action. Very pleased to move the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. Councillor Brown would like to second the motion.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to second the motion. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to say a few words based upon my experiences of the issues. Okay?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and councillors, I'm pleased to second the motion of the leader. As leaders within our communities, we are well placed to challenge racism, inequality, and all types of discrimination. Since I was a child and into adulthood, I've not only seen all these issues take place within our society, but at times in the past experienced it directly myself whilst growing up along the border in Ireland. Over 20 years at first hand, I saw sectarianism, racism from two communities, one of which I was brought up in. This stopped progress, integration, and economic progress as well. Two communities thinking one was better than the other and bringing up century-old divisions as a reason often not to speak to each other. This division and hatred caused untold harm, and many lives were lost needlessly, often over what religion you were or what flag you supported. This was a time many of you relate to as the Troubles, when often in a small town or village, certain shops or pubs were only for one nationalist group or one unionist group, both couldn't go in together. I remember going to football training matches in the late 1990s, being stopped at checkpoints on a bus, held there to make sure we never made the match. This would happen regularly and did the opposite that was intended. It created more anger and hatred than resolve issues. The division created even more hatred that boiled over and lasted 40 years. It eventually took leaders to come together and work a way forward, meaning the differences in history had to be left behind. This led to the peace process, which there's been 15 years now relative peace. This was only achieved by both sides challenging the prejudices of the past. Not only was Ireland embroiled in its own issues, but at the time it did not have many citizens who came from an ethnic background. However, in the late 1980s and through the 1990s, the Republic of Ireland football team hired an Englishman called Jack Charlton. Jack, as you know, a World Cup winner, one of our own over here, who died only over a week ago. But yesterday, the whole of the country came out to celebrate what was a great man who brought a country together. Sport is often used as an example of how prejudice are broken. Jack did something special. He wasn't afraid to introduce both black and English-born players. He introduced two black players, one being Paul McGrath, the famous Paul McGrath, who was later went on to play for Aston Villa and be Player of the Year in 1992. Paul was a black kid born in England, taken home to Dublin, placed in an orphanage, because at that time, the Catholic Church and the state didn't want to entertain single parents, or especially a black child in a single parent household. However, those who supported Paul showed him that colour didn't matter, it was all about talent and potential. This new era, created by Jack Charlton, opened the eyes of a nation. People started to find out what we were about, and it changed the economy forever. Ireland now being the Ireland you know, and a tourism haven. Again, it was someone coming in and not being afraid to challenge the status quo and showing that being open-minded, what it can achieve. I've now lived in England for over 20 years, and still today, some of how the communities live separately back home, I see that in some parts of this country. This is a great country with many great achievements, and one is the opportunities that people get who come here to live and work, especially from all over the world and especially our Commonwealth. However, whether people openly admit it or not, racism and prejudice still often exist subconsciously in people's minds. Having been welcomed firstly in Plymouth and then Grimsby when I first came to England, I saw the gap in the two different parts of the country with different issues and different inequalities. Excuse me. I am lucky to have mainly felt welcome. I came here skilled, but many generations before me came here unskilled. And that is the case for many people across the world. And it's about how do we integrate people into our community and actually get the best out of them. It is community leaders like us who have a role playing in helping educate, lead by example, and challenge inequality and prejudice. We put ourselves forward to lead, and now more than ever, we need to be part of the solution and not just stand by thinking someone else will sort it. Melton, even though a small community, has a rich history of welcoming people, such as, for example, a Polish community after the war, giving them homes, education and jobs. Many of the original families who arrived now have second, third, fourth generation children. Credit to this great community. Inequality and prejudice also take many other forms, such as those in lower incomes, disability, mental health, gender-based discrimination, etc. I believe that as a council and community, we can challenge all this discrimination and ensure that our borough is welcoming and educated, aware and able to challenge. Therefore, I'm fully supportive of the motion on the approach of the leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Does any member want to open the debate? Any member want to speak?
Mr. Mayor, we have Councillor Illingworth, Evans, Posnett, Lumley, Holmes and Cumbers.
Illingworth, Evans, Posnett, Holmes.
Lumley, Holmes and then Cumbers.
Right. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I've had my hand up for a little while. It's not about this item. I have an unexpected visitor and I need to deal with this situation. Would you mind awfully if I leave the meeting at this point?
Not at all. No.
If it's possible to, I will be supporting the motion that's before you. I don't know whether I can vote ahead of it being counted, but I'm afraid
I'll leave that up to the executive at the time. Yeah.
I need to bid you good evening.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you, sir.
Councillor Evans.
Hello there. I think I'm on again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I always have to check I'm coming through. This is always a sensitive subject and always has been. We've all got instances of what the leader and the seconder has said on this thing of unconscious discrimination. And I'm well aware that I'm one of those people old enough to and know enough to know that I'm one of them. I remember way back when I was in BGS in the early days, speaking to a person on the phone at length at British Petroleum, and then he was based in Sunbury-on-Thames, going to see him. And when I arrived there, I looked for him and I couldn't see him. And then suddenly this person came up with a different ethnic origin, and he could see the shock in my face because there is no way from his voice I would have realised he was black. And to this day, it's to my horror that I had an appalling look on my face. And that those are the kind of things that we have to overcome. The fact that at times we make unconscious decisions to think of someone in a certain shape or face or whatever. And I'm glad that you also, Mr. Mayor, put down about it has to be any form of discrimination, whether it's about someone who's blind, in any way physically disadvantaged. There are so many people, or religion, there are so many people who are fighting, or sexuality, who are fighting in society to be recognised and treated the same as everybody else. And that's what it all comes down to. The one thing that always worries me about these debates is, let's be blunt about this, Mr. Mayor, it's not what we say, it's what we do. And I have to say, I would praise the Chief Executive, watched carefully this council since I've joined. And as an employer, we are I would say we are good. We are very good to some I have seen. And I therefore wonder why this is being brought forward now, because I see nothing in this council that suggests that people who are disadvantaged or different are treated in any different way. And I think that is excellent by this council. And therefore, although I support this motion, I wonder why we are bringing this when there are bigger issues to fry at this moment in time. In particular, we are in the middle of a pandemic, when we have shops closing, people losing their jobs, all kinds of issues. It just seems that the timing is somewhat strange when we have issues within Melton Borough Council that are forever going on at the point in time. And that's what concerns me. We should be looking at trying to help the people who are for the next 6 months to the
if
year.
I could remind you, and actually all other members, but our standing order 8.3 speeches must be directed for question and motion.
They are being directed. They're being directed to racism and discrimination But my concern is why we're having this debate, which I know from my experience in Westcott Borough Council, any member can question why a debate has come forward at this particular point in time. And I am questioning that when we've got more pressing issues, whether it's car parking or whatever, than racism in our society at this point in time, because we are in the middle of a pandemic. I know racism is important, but not at this point in time, in my opinion. We have got bigger issues, and as you know, financially and everything in society at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm now losing. I think I've lost Councillor Evans.
No,
I haven't. You're back again.
I'm still here.
I think it's my turn, Mr. Mayor.
Is Councillor Evans finished? Yeah. Councillor Posnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think everybody knows why we're having this motion brought at the moment, but it's as much about equalities as it is about anti-racism. And what I just want to say that I hope that this council now takes equalities seriously, because in the past we did have annual training on this. When I first got elected in 2003, for a number of years, I was the equalities champion, for want of a better word, and we did have annual training. But that seems to have died a death over the year. I know things have changed, but I also believe that things like equalities can change in a 12-month period. And I know I've also had the role at County Council, and every year we do have a session on equalities for all members. And it's not a long session, it's 20 minutes, half an hour. We tend to have a speaker, someone who is experienced in that world. We're brought up to date with any changes, and it can be working changes or anything like this. And I just think that that is something that we need to have. We should have a meeting where all councillors are expected to attend. And if they can't attend it, an officer can give them a briefing afterwards, or it's done online. But I do think it's something that we don't just give a nod to. Vogue, we're in fashion, we've joined the club. This is very important. Anti-racism is important. And I think Councillor Brown did an absolute.
Thank you, Councillor Posnett. Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say I do agree on many of the points that the councillors who have spoken on this subject so far have said. I also support the motion tonight on this topic. We obviously know why this has been brought to full councils, because of my tweet I sent on Twitter on the 3rd of June. I don't want to explain why again. It was said because I've said it several times to several councillors' offices and the public on Twitter. But what I am very concerned about, I'm just going back to the actual subject of why this is being brought to full council, is the fact that I am very concerned in this country that this whole Black Lives Matter movement is being hijacked by quite a large group of very far left, very far left communist people, and their policies include wanting to axe the police, axing the armed forces, and actually saying some rather anti-Semitic comments. I cannot support this movement if that's what they stand for. It's wrong, and I cannot support that. And what also concerns me is that the whole of the BBC, the whole of the press now in this country, including on the news on the BBC, ITV News, Channel 4 News especially, and Channel 5 News and Sky News, it's extremely biased. They only ever say on this subject matter only a very small part, one side of the story, which is completely unacceptable. I have complained to the BBC ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 and Sky News about this, because it's completely unacceptable in this country. This country prides itself on free speech, and totally agree. Equal opportunities, absolutely. And we shouldn't be racist, absolutely. But we've got to be careful that we're not going down the line of having to hinder free speech, because that's what our country is based on, and it's completely wrong. I do want to just talk about quickly the comments, what Councillor Posnett has just said. I think we do a very good job of equalities on this council, actually. Certainly when I was elected in 2011, 2015 and 2019, I believe, if I remember correctly, and I'm sure my memory serves me correctly, we did have to sign an agreement that we are councillors, we are elected members, and we should treat everybody equally, and you know, no matter their ethnic group, etc. We have to accept that. So, and there's a very, very long script about that as we become councillors. It's also the same if you become like a Leicestershire County councillor as well, because I've seen them. So, you know, I do think we do a very good job. And also, just touching on what Chris Evans has said, Councillor Evans, he's absolutely right. I do think this council as a whole does an excellent job on equalities. And I think we should be very proud of ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lumley. Councillor Holmes. Councillor Holmes.
Cute. Somebody didn't unmute me. I don't know why. Anyway, the last time I was mayor, there was a young mayor. This young mayor I thought was an excellent young man. He is a young Indian guy, but I was told that I couldn't call him Indian. I had to call him Asian. So I said to him, apparently I'm told that I can't, that you're Asian. He said, no, I'm not, I'm Indian. I am Indian, I'm proud of it. Of course he's proud of it. And he was just the most lovely young man. He was polite, he did everything that he could to help me, and I hope I helped him. I have never in my life had any problems with any colour, creed or anything else. That is one of the reasons I actually didn't know Chris Evans was going to say why we're bringing this up now, because I don't see why we are. Don't ever have any problem whatsoever or ever have with any nationality. And in Melton, it doesn't happen. I don't know whether you remember, Mr. Mayor, somebody who was head of housing was called Adam Jacobs. And he and I had to interview a young man who was going to be his assistant. He came from Huddersfield and he came in, he was a young Asian lad, and he said, I've been walking round Melton and I want to know where the trouble spots are. Well, there aren't any. There never have been. And I am proud to think that I live in a borough that never has any problems racially or anything else. And I really wonder why we are making such a fuss about it, because it just doesn't happen here. And thank goodness that I live in a borough that it doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Cumbers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think that murder in America was one of those things, a bit like the Kennedy assassination, that nobody will ever forget. You know, it really it was so absolutely shocking. What I will say is that discrimination in the past was a lot worse than it is now, but there's still a lot to be done. When I moved as a teenager to work and live in London, central London, and I can remember seeing the signs for accommodation, you know, that's bed sitters and flats. And they used to say, no coloured. This is for tenants. These are the tenants they didn't want. No coloured, no Irish, no children, and no dogs. And I think things have certainly moved on a lot since then. I agree actually with Pam and the equality training. In the past, it was compulsory, and I can remember that some members who thought that they weren't sort of discriminating, but they still had to go to the training. And one or two actually turned up at committee meetings and weren't allowed to sit as on the committee until they'd had the equalities training, because it does remind you and makes you think a bit. But no, and I'm glad that the proposal was changed to include all discrimination. I think at the moment we've had this particular horror of the black discrimination, but it's all over the world. There is still too much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Calvers. Has anybody else indicated they wish to speak?
I have, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Chandler. Yeah.
Councillor Orson and Councillor Higgins and Councillor Chandler.
Right, Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes. Yep. Loud and clear.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I'll take you back a long time ago to my school days when our head teacher always preached that we were all equal, irrespective of colour or creed. And I think if the whole world looked upon that, we wouldn't have half the problems we've got today, because a lot of problems in the world come back to religion, sadly, and I'm a Christian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chandler. Councillor Orson.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to wind up the debate, so possibly jumped in too quick there. So I will come in at the last one, please.
Mr. Mayor, we do have Councillor Pritchett as well as Councillor Higgins. And
Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, I would like to thank Councillor Brown for his personal examples and the time he took to prepare his speech, and I would like to commend him his delivery. And I always look forward to Councillor Brown preparing to speak. I've heard him before on housing, and I look forward to hearing him again. Thank you very much, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Higgins.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor? Is it clear?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay, this is through the phone, so that's why. Anyway, so yeah. So why is this paper here? Well, I mean, some people have alluded to many things, but I also think it shows leadership. Why this paper in times of COVID? Well, I think we're going to have a huge debate of how COVID's going to change the world and change society as well. One thing that has certainly come out of this crisis is the acknowledgement of our housing and how communities interact, and especially what I would like to point out is overcramped housing and workplaces. And it is incumbent, I believe, on political leaders, business leaders, leaders of communities and religious groups to make sure that we're always moving forward. So we're not placing people in overcramped conditions, be that housing or workplaces. I think we are going to start to see some issues in terms of housing, and just to sit idly by trying to blanket refuse housing for where people are trying to aspire to, and keep people where they're not earning their potential, be that either in the workplace or in life, is not going to cut it. And that is going to be the largest discrimination that any councillor can give. If we discriminate against people who aren't able to get housing and find work, it will always create communities, as Councillor Brown very much pointed to, which become angry, become isolated, and eventually disrespect or have no respect for law or the law of order that society is trying to do. So it is incumbent on us all to make sure we create vibrant communities and build the place shaping that I know this council, as Councillor Holmes was saying, and this council is always trying to achieve. Just my last point on this, what I think some politicians often assume is the BAME community, that they're all the same, and that also white groups are equally privileged as well. And that's not always the case. There are lots of work where different ethnic minority groups do struggle at education, including also white working class boys as well. And so we've got to look at that in any kind of part. And attainment in education and in life is relative. And if we're to help the very worst off, it's education we've got to invest in. And what I would like to say on education, it was a great shame that King Edward closed, and now we're in the position that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Orson, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd like to wind up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little bit surprised about the remark saying, why now? I think it's fairly clear to me why now. COVID-19 exposes discrimination. That is the brutal fact. It exposes discrimination. And Councillor Higgins has alluded to that. So genuinely taken back with that. I applaud Pam Posnet with her thinking. And just for everyone's knowledge, I've asked the Chief Executive to organise training for staff and all members, and for staff and members to be mixed in together. So not just members with a specific package, not just staff with a specific message, but to mix in all together. A massive thanks to Ronan for the seconding. My memories of the troubled areas go back a little bit before Ronan's, but I only saw it on television. I didn't live out there on the borders, so I can't really understand the rawness of what went on over there. But I certainly remember the horrific pictures from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. I remember in Birmingham, the bomb there, and then everyone in the country being searched every time we went everywhere. It was a terrible time for all. And we just don't want to return to those days, so no doubt about that. And also, I was very pleased that Ronan mentioned Jack Charlton, how he used what's called a beautiful game. I'm sure Alan Pearson he is smiling already, how he used sport to bring people together. What a wonderful example of bringing two communities so much opposed to each other, but that one guy somehow brought them together, and Ronan smack on. Ever since 1994, wasn't it? Jack Charlton's success with the Irish team, the troubles have started to cease. So well done, Jack Charlton. Sorry we lost you, but boy, have you got some legacy. So very happy to move the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Nobody else wishes to speak? No? Good. I will now hand over to Chief Executive to take a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for, against, or abstain, please, members. So Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Bidlos. For. Councillor Brown. For. Councillor Carter. For.
Quality, diversity and inclusivity, Chris.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Cumbers. Councillor de Burl.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Unfortunately, Councillor Illingworth left before the debate, so is unable to vote, so will be marked as absent. Councillor Lumley.
For.
Councillor Orson.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnet.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
And my understanding is that Councillor Wood has dropped out of the meeting, so will also be marked as absent. Thank you.
Chief Executive, can you just confirm me, although Councillor Illingworth said that he was in favour and like to have voted in favour, we can't take that as a vote?
No, that's correct, Mr. Mayor, because he was absent for the debate.
Absolutely.
Could we record it in the minutes at all? Because he definitely did say it.
He did. I'm sure the minutes can reflect that comment that was made during the early parts of the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
So that was 22 for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. That's been carried unanimously. We move on to the motion on notice release of sky lanterns and balloons. And I ask for, it'll proceed to a roll call vote. I ask Councillor Orson to introduce the motion. Councillor Orson? Can you introduce the motion on the release of sky and lanterns and balloons?
Yep, I'm very happy to move the motion at 13.2 that the council resolves to ban the use and release of sky lanterns and helium balloons meant for release on all council-owned public open space, to discourage the release of sky lanterns and helium balloons at any events licensed by Melton Borough Council, and request third parties who lease council property to observe the ban on balloon and sky lantern releases. To delegate authority to the Director for Governance and Regulatory Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Climate, Access and Engagement to make any consequential changes to council policies and agreements in relation to the use of council land as a result of this motion. To promote information to local people, leading to better understanding of the damage sky lanterns do. And before I forget, just before this debate started, about an hour before, Councillor Hewson phoned me and said he would also like his vote recorded in the minutes as for the motion. So if that could be done, Chief Executive, I'd be very pleased. So Councillor Hewson is obviously supporting the motion. Obviously, just a brief introduction for me. I mean, it's quite simple, really. What goes up must come down. It's as simple as that, isn't it? And sky lanterns, they might look pretty, but they are a serious danger to animals and the countryside. Sky lanterns are usually used in Britain to mark special celebrations such as weddings, parties, New Year, but they can cause serious problems in the countryside and also in the urban areas. For those who aren't totally sure what a sky lantern is, it's essentially a small hot air balloon made of paper with an opening at the bottom where a candle is suspended. Sky lanterns, or Chinese lanterns as they're also known, can float for miles, but they fall to the ground, causing a danger to animals and a fire hazard to property. It's not just litter, not burnt, but burning litter. And it's just time that we took a stance on this. It's, like I say, it's a ban on effectively releasing sky lanterns in the country park, really, because that's about the only public open space Melton Borough Council. The risks are quite clear. It's a litter nuisance, there is a fire risk, and the dangers to animals and livestock is just amazing, really, when you go around. Those of us who are used to walking on farmland would have come across for years and years and years helium balloons lying on the floor where livestock can easily swallow them and then cause problems to their digestive system. I could easily set off a Chinese lantern here tonight and it could float over to Bradgate Park and then it could drop down and a deer could take it tomorrow morning. It could land on an industrial unit in Melton and then bring out all the emergency services. So you can see the hassle they cause. Interestingly enough, a number of councils in the East Midlands have already taken this stance. It's not that long a list, but I will read them out for you. Corby Borough Council, Derbyshire Dales District Council, Gedlin Borough Council, High Peak Borough Council, Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council, Leicester City Council, Lincoln City Council, Newark and Sherwood District Council, Nottinghamshire County Council, Rushcliffe Borough Council, Rutland County Council, South Kesteven District Council, and West Lindsey District Council. So as you can see, Mr. Mayor, we're in good company if this motion is voted through. Just one moment, I've lost my notes. Many organisations have already drawn attention to the problem of sky lanterns and balloon releases, so it's not unusual for a ban. We also get support from the RSPCA, the RSPB and the BASC, and of course, the one group that I've already declared an interest, as also Councillor Holmes and Councillor Chandler, the National Farmers Union. One thing I have to comment on before I hand over to my seconder, some people do say, well, sky lanterns are biodegradable nowadays. And that's true to a certain extent, but they can take 5 years to biodegrade. That's just too long lying on the ground waiting for an animal, whether it be a domesticated animal or farm animal or a wild animal, to come along and swallow it. And it still doesn't take away the risk to thatched cottages, homes, property, industrial units. So very pleased to move that motion, Mr. Mayor, and look to my seconder for support.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Freya-Jones, would you like to second the motion?
Yeah, very happy to second the motion. I looked quite in depth on the internet about the Sky Lantern and balloon issue, and there's a website, Countryside Online, which backs British farmers, and they list all of the councils throughout the United Kingdom that have banned the use of both aspects. I think there's about 170 in total, and we've got Germany have done a total country ban on it, and also Wales have totally banned the use of both of them as well. One of the other things, apart from the adverse effects on the countryside, is there's an issue also with false alarms. So when they go over the sea, the Coast Guards can mistake them for distress signals as well. So it's not just a nuisance to the countryside, which is quite bad, but also to the emergency services as well. So they cause a nuisance totally for a lot of different reasons. So really, really happy to second that motion. Thank you
very much. I now open the debate. Any members signal they wish to speak?
We have councillors Wilkinson, Carter, Lumley, Evans and Chandler.
Wilkinson, Carter, Lumley,
Evans and Chandler.
Right, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to speak tonight in support of this motion. Sky lanterns and balloons might look really pretty, but they're a blight on our towns and countryside. Look at it this way. A sky lantern is an uncontrollable fire that is released into the air with no way of ensuring that it lands safely or it can be extinguished easily. Earlier this year, a mother and daughter released a sky lantern in Krefeld in Germany. Little were they to know that this sky lantern, an uncontrolled fire, would land on a building in a nearby zoo. The fire that consumed the building led to the deaths of 30 animals, many of which were endangered species. This is just a single example of the dangers of sky lanterns, but if they don't burn down a building, they litter our parks, garden and countryside. They endanger wildlife through being eaten and ingested, or simply by animals getting tangled up in them. Although we're a small authority doing what we can, I would call on the government to ban their sale nationally. 200,000 of them were bought last year alone. Helium balloons are just as bad. When people release them, they do so with no regard for where they're going to land or how they're disposed of. When I was looking into some research for tonight, I came across a news report on YouTube from 1986 when Cleveland in the United States attempted to break the Guinness World Record for the largest number of balloons released. 1.5 million balloons were released at that event, many of them landing in Lake Erie, causing wildlife and fish to get caught up or ingest them. Many just littered Canadian towns on the other side of the lake. The images of hundreds of thousands of balloons covering the lake really stuck in my mind. More so when the news report went on to tell the story of how the volume of balloons hindered the search and rescue of 2 fishermen who were found dead a few days later. This might be an extreme example, but I think members understand what I'm trying to say. We need to ensure that these types of accidents don't happen in Melton, and I strongly urge colleagues to support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Carter.
You there, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Loud and clear.
It's just a quick one. Yeah, I'm for this motion and all. I back this. My concern is what happens if someone is caught using these balloons? What action is the council willing to take on this? Thank you.
Thank you. Is that a question to the leader?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Would the leader like to answer?
Can I answer my summing up, Chair?
Right, fine. Yep. Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to add on to what Councillor Carter was saying, if it's an issue in the country park, as the council leaders has said it is, and particularly it could be, how is this going to be enforced? Because we're not at the minute, we're not great at enforcing some of the things in the country park, such as the illegal fishing in the country park lake. So if we are going to be intent on having these rules, we do need to make sure that they are enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything that's been said. I would like to suggest to the leader the best way we can get for action on this, especially on the sky lanterns, is to press via our MP for the sale of sky lanterns to be banned. Because as he's pointed out, although the country park, yes, could be a release site, it will be a significant minority of any that could affect our farmers. My personal view is that the easiest way, being these are such, well, basically unmanned sort of drones which can go anywhere, I believe the best thing to do is to stop the sale of these in this country. Helium balloons obviously is another issue, and maybe, but I always believe in tackling one thing at a time, but certainly I can see no benefit to Britain of the release or use of sky lanterns, and I believe we should press our MP to ban the sale of them, because that will then stop everything for the farmers in this country. And I think that's the best way forward, rather than just the country park, because let's be honest, how are we going to possibly legislate for that? Because someone could release one at 10 or 11 at night. Who's going to be there and seeing them? The best way is for us to actually take real action, which is to press our MP, to press the government for a ban on sky lanterns. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Chandler.
I would like to, well, actually, Councillor Evans has stolen my thunder, because I was going to say this should be referred to central government. It should be a nationwide ban. We've picked up humpteen over the years in fields. Even when they combine, they find them in the bottom of the crop. I mean, it is really a serious situation. And I think it's not a local government thing, it is a central government matter. And I endorse every word Councillor Evans has said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Any other councillor indicate they wish to speak? No, in which case, Councillor Wilson.
Apologies, we have Councillor Higgins with his hand raised.
Councillor Higgins.
Just a very quick point is on helium, because we've not really spoken much on helium balloons, but just for any members of the public interested in that, helium is the only non-renewable element that we have in the world, and we're very quickly running out of it, as Councillor Evans probably knows from his own professional experience. So every time we fill those helium balloons up, it literally leaves the earth, and it's a very precious element that we have.
Right. I think I've frozen again. Can anyone else hear me? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we can hear you.
Who can? I lost Councillor Higgins. I didn't know it was just me.
Yeah, I'll just wind up, Mr. Mayor, with your permission. Someone else
wind up, including what action we will take.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their contribution. And of course, people who want national legislation are right. But you do have to start somewhere in your own locality, because that legislation isn't there. And even if we got our MP to agree tomorrow morning, it'd probably take 18 months, 2 years, in which time some harm could be done. And if we save one fire, one animal from a really bad evening after swallowing a helium balloon, it's been a success, let's be fair. And also it's down to this council to show leadership on certain issues. And that's what this is about. When it comes to the enforcement that I think Steve first raised and supported by Simon, it's just possible and probable. If you have one person who wants to light one sky lantern, yeah, you probably, it's very hard to enforce, there's no doubt about that. But if it's an event, and most of these things are fired off in events, because one sky lantern isn't that great a sight, it's nice and pretty, I'm sure, but at the end of the day, people do tend to light them in multitudes of numbers. We'd be able to control that with license conditions. And of course, if they break their license, we do have enforcement. There's no doubt about that. There's also the possibility and probability that you could use antisocial behaviour legislation and a community protection notice subject to the various issues. So we do have a newly established regulatory team, if you remember. We do have an enforcement officer nowadays, and that person could use the powers that they already have, especially on the antisocial powers. But what I will do on behalf of Chris Points and Prue's point, what we will do is we will get a letter off to, well, the Secretary of State, and also copy in our MP asking for action at a national level.
Thank you very much, Councillor Austin. We will now proceed for Chief Executive to take a named vote. I imagine Councillor Hewson will be treated exactly the same way as Councillor Illingworth was at the last time.
Councillor Hewson.
Yes, that's right, Mr. Mayor. My suggestion would be that we capture Councillor Austin's notes in the minutes as we did for Councillor Illingworth earlier. If I can proceed, members, to the vote, then requesting for, against, or abstain. Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Carter.
For.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor de Burgh.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer-Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent, but will acknowledge his comments through the leader's comments earlier on. Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Illingworth is absent. Councillor Lumley.
For.
Councillor Orson.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
And my understanding is that Councillor Wood is also still absent, which means there are 22 for, Mr. Mayor.
That's been carried. Thank you very much indeed. The next motion is a motion of fair trade. And I'll get to see, there'll be a roll call following it. Councillor Smedley, would you like to introduce this? Move it.
Yep. Good evening, members. So similar to the first motion, we've sort of had a bit of a change of what the actual motion is and what the recommendation is. So if I could change that to proposing that the council supports the Fair Trade Steering Group in their 2019 renewal application to renew the Melton Borough's fair trade status, to actively promote fair trade locally through support for local groups, events and events, including during Fair Trade Fortnight, and to support the promotion and use of fair trade refreshments within the council premises, including meeting rooms, community centres and council offices. I did send that new wording out yesterday, so hopefully people do have that. Is that okay? Fab. So I'll keep this brief. Since the Fair Trade Mark was launched in the UK in 1994, consumer demand for these products has grown, and this is thanks to the efforts of grassroots campaigners and pioneering businesses. I believe that the recently agreed International Fair Trade Charter should be welcomed, as it rightfully states that rising inequality, entrenched poverty, and a deepening ecological crisis have led the global community to seek new models of business and trade that drive fair and sustainable economies. The fair trade principles of paying a premium that is wholly managed by farmers and workers themselves, and of minimum prices to protect producers from market volatility, are crucial to systemic change. I strongly believe that local authorities and other public bodies should support this fantastic cause that improves the standard of living for so many people less fortunate than ourselves, ensuring that they are free from exploitation and modern slavery. And yeah, I would like to propose that we support the following the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smedley. Well done. Councillor Austin, wanted to second it?
Yeah, I'm very pleased to second, and also just to congratulate Councillor Smedley. This is her first motion. I've been massively impressed the amount of work she's put into this and the homework. So well done, Rebecca. I'm absolutely proud of you that you're a member of my group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now opening for debate. Has anybody saying they wish to talk?
Yes,
on the
Mr. Mayor,
subject?
we have Councillor Holmes, Carter. Councillor Orson still has his hand raised. I don't know if he wanted to add anything.
Councillor Holmes and Councillor Carter.
No, just Councillor Holmes and Councillor Carter.
Councillor Holmes.
And now Councillor
Yeah, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Right, thank you. Yes, I realise and appreciate the work that you have put into this. When you sent stuff out yesterday about all the places in Melton and around the borough, you've obviously done massive amount of work to find out all the places that actually do have had fair trade, tea, coffee, etc. I would like to just ask a question. Do you know all the places that you actually mentioned? Will they be able to survive? Are they open now? And also, because fair trade, coffee, tea, whatever, is more expensive to buy, can you tell me if in shops it is bought very often? That's one of the things I would like to know. And right at the end, can we make sure that you said that you would like fair trade tea, coffee, whatever it was, to be had in the council offices? Can we make sure that those silly little things of milk are not used, that we actually use our own milk from our own cows, because that milk comes from I don't know where, and that would be some of our fair trade, wouldn't it? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smedley, would you like to reply to any of those?
Could I wait and see what Councillor
Yes,
Carter said
do-
first,
yes.
and then come back?
Councillor Carter.
Yeah, hold on, Mr. Mayor. I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Right, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I can't support this for a couple of reasons. I was a premise officer for 15 years at the council, and I had arguments, councillors having goes at me for having fair trade in the council, saying it was rubbish, it was useless, and that. And I was doing the ordering in the council for coffee and that. It's expensive. It's too expensive to buy, and we're at a crisis of saving money for this council. So the councils in the past used to have goes at me for this coffee, teas and sugar, where they didn't like it, and I can't support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Was anybody else wish to speak?
We have Councillor Lumley and Councillor Cumbers.
Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, actually, surprisingly, I'm going to add on what Councillor Carter's just said. I don't know why he seems to have stolen my thunder. But yeah, it's come to my attention from what I found about this that was costing us as a council quite a bit more money in procuring this fair trade coffee. I particularly, when I've tried it, I'm not keen on the branded fair trade coffee personally. And I'm just a bit concerned that we want to go around and make sure that this fair trade brand has got to be embedded in the whole of the borough. I believe in choice. It's a very internationalist brand. And I think at this moment in time, we ought to be emphasising sort of, buying locally. Don't get me wrong. No, I know coffee beans come from South America, etc. But I just think the whole brand is becoming what I've read quite a big cost to us. But I just want to say well done to Councillor Smedley for doing her homework on this and putting it to council, because she has done a good job. But fortunately, I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lumley. Councillor Cumbers.
Yes, thank you. I'll just say a couple of things which Rebecca might not know about. The little containers that had the milk, I don't think they've been used for some years now. But of course they were cow's milk, and it was British milk. I think coming from Lichfield, so it was British milk. And most of the coffee now, I don't actually believe is fair trade at the council, because I think the feeling was that so many, there's a certain amount of sharing between the other tenants in the council, in Parkside, and it wasn't fair not to give them a choice. So I don't believe that fair trade coffee is used, but I think the wording that Rebecca's used, sort of promoting, I think it's always nice to remind people. And coffee and tea, to be absolutely honest, they are both so cheap. And I can remember some years ago somebody complaining about the cost of fair trade coffee, and I went through and counted the spoonfuls and worked out the price, and it made a penny difference per cup, per mug. So I don't really think that's important nowadays, but perhaps Rebecca wants to say more. Thank you.
Right. Does any other councillor wish to speak?
We have Councillor Higgins and Councillor Carter again.
Right, Councillor Higgins and then Councillor Carter.
Just ever so quickly, is fair trade is just how we trade with the producers, and we probably all enjoy these brands, which is Tate and Lyle, Cadbury's Dairy Milk, Nestle's, Kit Kats. It's not all about just fair trade as an organisation and all that. So it's how we interact with the world, and Cadbury's is a very large company. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Quickly. You going to say something?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep. Quick.
Yeah. Going back to what Pat Cummins just said, I disagree, because, like I said, I used to have complaints of councillors all the time for using fair trade, saying it's crap. Yes, we do use different coffee in the council, but yes, we do get ordinary milk. We get it from the local shop. We don't use the cartons anymore. We get the milk from the well-being shop, local.
Right.
I used to have really debates about this with councillors having a go at me for using this coffee. And every time I set the teas and coffees out, I used to get moaned at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carter. Councillor Smedley, or chance to sum up.
Thank you. So I will come back on the majority of things that were mentioned. So Elaine asked me if the shops will survive, the ones that we're promoting fair trade to. I can't answer that as I'm not an economist, but hopefully the Eat Out to Help Out scheme should help with these places and they should benefit from that. So fingers crossed for them. Fair trade will still be a choice. We're not forcing you to consume it. It's just promoting the work that they do, and the fact that inevitably by making that choice to go to choose fair trade products, you are helping out someone that's a lot less fortunate than yourself. So if you don't want to do it, that's fine. You don't have to, but obviously we're just there to promote it and support it. Milk does not actually come under fair trade, so I can't really comment on the council using milk that people don't like. And fair trade products may seem more expensive than other products, but personally, I feel a moral compulsion to support those that are less fortunate than me. So if I were to choose between some of the products that do actually come under fair trade, not milk and so on, bananas, cocoa, coffee, flowers, sugar, tea, cotton, fruits and juices, herbs and spices, honey, nuts and oils, quinoa, rice, vegetables, wine, gold, sports balls, textiles, carbon and composites. So actually quite a lot of that stuff cannot be produced over here. It can't be produced locally. So we're not sidelining any British producers at all. We just want to support those that are less fortunate. So that's it really. I hope that most of you can support this.
Well done, Councillor Smedley. That's very impressive. Thank you. I now move for Chief Executive to take a name vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Cumbers did have her hand raised whilst Councillor Smedley was speaking there. I didn't know if you wanted to ask her if she wanted to speak.
Ask her quickly what she would. Councillor Cumbers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to repeat, I don't believe that fair trade coffee is used at the council now, though it was in the past when Steve was our caretaker. No, I think Rebecca's spoken very well this evening, and I think she's explained things well. And I'm very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I'll proceed to the roll call vote. So for the final time this afternoon, members, for, against or abstain. Councillor Baines is absent. Councillor Binloss.
For.
Oh, apologies, Councillor Graham. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, are you comfortable that I proceed to the vote?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I disappeared again.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Binloss.
For.
Councillor Brown. Councillor Carter.
Against.
Councillor Chandler. Councillor Chandler.
Against.
Councillor Child is absent. Councillor Cumbers.
For.
Councillor de Burl.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
For.
Councillor Evans. Apologies, I didn't catch that, Councillor Evans.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Freer-Jones.
For.
Councillor Glancy.
For.
Councillor Graham.
For.
Councillor Hewson is absent. Councillor Higgins.
For, and congratulations, Rebecca, on a very well put motion. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
Against.
Councillor Illingworth is absent. Councillor Lumley.
Against.
Councillor Orson.
For.
Councillor Pearson.
For.
Councillor Posnett.
For.
Councillor Pritchett.
Abstain.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Steadman.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
For.
And Councillor Wood is absent. One moment, please, Mr. Mayor.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have 17 for, 4 against, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. So that's been carried. Move on to the next thing. There are no recommendations and reports from committees. We'll be glad to hear. And a report from a chief executive use on emergency powers. This item, I'll seek a mover and a seconder. Following any debate, I shall then confirm that the report has been noted and will not proceed to a vote. So, Councillor Orson. Councillor Orson.
Sorry. Very happy to move the report.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
And I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Does any member wish to participate or talk on it? Use the raise hand facility. Nope. In which case that is taken as noted. And that concludes the meeting. So thank you all very much. And for those who are going away for a short break, I hope you all enjoy it, especially the Chief Executive. He does deserve it. Yeah, sorry.
Before you close, Mr. Mayor, I have Councillor Orson and Councillor Carter with their hands raised.
Oh, right. Sorry. Councillor Carter.
This is a full council meeting, and I think it's inappropriate to dress properly. I think we should be dressing properly. I know we're on Zoom, but some of the councillors seem to be thinking, and I think we should be dressing appropriate in ties and shirts, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Olsen.
Yeah, just like to say thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, for chairing the meeting so well. It's always difficult on Zoom. Those who've chaired a meeting know how difficult it is. Well done to you. I love the flowers to the right of your shoulder, trying to decorate it for us.
A mess.
A massive thanks to the officers for all the work preparing the meeting and supporting the meeting, and just as importantly, thanks to all the members for a relatively long meeting. And also, I joined the council in 2003. I've never known 3 motions ever before. So well done, everyone.
Thank you all very much. And
Mr. Pearson, I've got a...
Mr. Pearson,
just to let Mr. Carter know, I've just come out of hospital from major surgery. I'm actually in my bed, but I've attended the meeting. I can't dress because of the problems I've got. I've only got one arm at the moment. So forgive me, but I had no option. Thank you.
That's fair enough, Alan.
Well, we wish you well, Alan. Speedy and continued recovery.
Could I just say, Mr. Mayor, by the way, just for Steve's knowledge, that if you're in the House of Commons, you don't have to wear a tie nowadays. A suit and a shirt, and no ties are quite acceptable in the House of Commons.
I can just go to that.
We finished the meeting, so that concludes that. I think a lot of members want to go home, or not go home. They are at home, but
I don't agree with what the leaders just said, Mr. Mayor.
No, fine.
No, I don't agree with it. When we was on the last full council meeting, it was agreed that we wear shirt and tie just because we're on Zoom. It's going back to normal. It was about 6 or 7 councillors just with shirts open, no ties on. We've got to look presentable. There's public watching this meeting. I'm sorry, I don't agree with it.
Oh, absolutely right, Steve. All right.
Forest are losing at home. Go. Forest are losing at home. 3-1.
Liverpool are winning 3-1 though. That's the main thing.
Anyway, the meeting is now closed. We can carry on chatting, but the meeting is closed.
No, we can't.